Crossovers are everywhere in today's society, and you need only look at the parking lot of your local grocery store to see it. In most garages across the country, they've replaced the car, station wagon, and minivan as the choice for families and individuals. In 2025, out of the over 16 million new vehicles sold in America, crossovers and SUVs made up nearly 60% of the total. Add in pickups, and that rises to nearly 80% of all vehicles. And the crossover craze has infected most of the rest of the world as well. But that begs the question, what was the first crossover? What was the true ancestor of today's mall crawlers? Well, it's probably not the vehicle you're thinking of, and is actually far, far older than you would expect. Welcome back to All Cars, my friends. I'm John, and let's dig into the history of the crossover today. But first, we need to define what a crossover actually is, and that is an exercise in frustration. Most consumers use the umbrella term of SUV for the category, and over time, distinctions have become ever more blurred. Generally speaking, an SUV has a construction similar to a pickup truck where the body is mounted on a separate frame, while a crossover is unibody where the body and frame are one unit like most modern cars, but with increased ride, seat, and roof heights. SUVs tend to be heavier, more powerful, have greater towing capacity, with rear-wheel drive and available four-wheel drive for off-road conditions, while crossovers tend to handle more car-like, get better fuel economy, be front-wheel drive, and sometimes offer all-wheel drive as an option. But for every one of these definitions, there exists multiple exceptions, which internet commenters are gleeful to respond to in comments. The number one best-selling SUV of all time in America, the Ford Explorer, started based on the Ford Ranger truck, but in 2011 switched to unibody construction. The Jeep Grand Cherokee combined a unibody with separate frame rails to create the Uniframe. The Jeep Cherokee XJ is famous for its off-road ability, while the Mitsubishi Pajero, known as the Montero in the US, moved to a unibody construction in 1999 and then won 7 Dakar rallies in a row. Another definition is that a crossover blends aspects from at least two different kinds of vehicles, sometimes with confusing results. Working backwards in time, the first generation Lexus RX of 1998 came to define the ideal of the luxury crossover, moving it beyond its pedestrian roots. Based off the Lexus ES300, which was itself based on the XV20 Camry and partially inspired by the all-wheel drive Japanese Toyota Kadena wagon, in 1997 Toyota proposed the SLV concept, the sport luxury vehicle. Toyota could propose such a creature as 4 years earlier in 1994 they'd released the RAV4, considered the single vehicle that demonstrated the modern crossover's appeal. As of 2025, it is the best-selling SUV worldwide of all time. Based partially on the Corolla, it came in 2 or 4 doors, later with a convertible 2-door option and in front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, and it set the template that others copied for soft rotors. Over 10 years before, in 1984, Jeep changed the conversation with the massively successful XJ Cherokee. Bucking the trends of the time, the Cherokee had 4 doors, unibody construction, real 4-wheel drive capability, and rode and handled better than the huge body-on-frame SUVs available like its predecessor. Families bought them instead of station wagons, and competitors soon began flooding the market. Between 1980 and 1989, SUV models increased from 1.79% to 6.49% of the market. In 1974, the first-generation Cherokee had used the term sport utility vehicle in an advertisement. While many can see the RAV4 as the spiritual predecessor of the car-based CUVs of today, or the Cherokee as being the vehicle to prove unibody construction in an SUV shape to replace cars and wagons, they both yield to yet another car, the 1980 AMC Eagle. Based on American Motors' Concorde model, the Eagle debuted for the 1980 model year as a coupe, sedan, and wagon, with, quote, passenger car comfort plus foul weather capabilities, nearly the definition of the modern CUV. In 1981, AMC offered the SX4 and camback models based on the Spirit, itself based on the Gremlin. AMC bet that consumers wanted comfort and traction for light off-road use, with standard full-time all-wheel drive years before Subaru became famous for it. The Eagle was sold until 1988. In 1985, Dodge took the Colt Vista, a tall wagon from Mitsubishi, and offered it with part-time four-wheel drive. Maybe not the first, but it definitely foreshadowed the coming car-based all-wheel drive crossovers. But the argument doesn't stop there, as the Eagle was preceded outside the U.S. by the French Matra Rancho in 1977. Designed in cooperation with Chrysler's European arm Simca, it was based on the tiny Simca 1100, specifically the lengthened pickup version, and was meant to appeal to the off-road culture inspired by Range Rover. Its higher ride height, rugged looks, and car-like interior hid the fact that it was a front-wheel drive only powered by a 1.4-liter engine. They also offered more upscale models with alloy wheels and more off-road oriented models with winches and undercarriage protection. Oddly, the Rancho was also classified as a leisure activity vehicle, as its direct replacement became the Renault Espace, arguably Europe's first minivan. The Rancho holds a special place in the development of the crossover, as it bucked the trend of so many SUVs at the time to be crude, with limited options and sparse and cheap interiors, essentially work trucks with a covered backpack. Combining the looks of an off-roader with a comfortable interior and car-based drivetrain, it absolutely forecast the future. But the Rancho still may not be the earliest crossover. Another, also unfamiliar to most Americans, would be the Russian Lada Niva from 1977. With a 1.6-liter 4 manual transmission, coil springs at each corner, and tall hatchback body, it also used a robust four-wheel drive system with 3 differentials. A crossover and having car-like convenience features, but with real off-road ability designed for rural Siberia, it was a massive success, especially to export markets. After nearly 5 decades, a version of it is still being sold as the Niva Legend to this day. Before that, our evidence gets a lot more murky. The 1963 Studebaker Lark Wagonaire with its station wagon body and sliding roof has been called the first crossover, as it mashed together several vehicle concepts, but only with rear-wheel drive. The 1947 Crossleaf 4 has been mentioned, as it used a convertible wagon body, again technically making it a crossover. And many other vehicles could be included in this lineage, but increasingly lean into the rugged off-road four-wheel drive and more of an SUV by our definition, such as the 1970 Range Rover adding luxury to off-road capability, or the International Scout of 61, the International Travelall of 56, or even the 1949 Jeep station wagon. Heck, even the 1936 Opel Geländesportwagen off-road racing car could be added here. So what was the first crossover? Well, it all depends on how you define it and where you want to draw the line. For most Americans, it's obviously the AMC Eagle with a car-like body and robust four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive option. Later continued by Subaru, and they had made popular and in its modern form by the Toyota. But if we expand our view just a little bit, the Matra met the definition of a car running gear and a tall body, with the Lada adding the car body with a robust four-wheel drive powertrain nearly 7 years before the XJ Cherokee. Was it an SUV or a CUV? I'm not sure that it really matters. Personally, I view the history of the CUV and the SUV as less of a lineage and more like a kaleidoscope. The further back we look, the more we see a mosaic of ideas that were tried, abandoned, updated, and maybe tried again. What is undeniable is that the SUV and the CUV have won the war around the world. But nothing is forever, and advancement isn't stagnant. Perhaps today there's a construction, a powertrain, a layout that is being tried by companies that will, decades later, turn into the next big thing. Thank you so much for being here. Special thanks to my patrons whose support helps make videos like this possible. Be sure to check out my second channel, All Cars Reacts, where I do reaction videos, news, opinions, and generally just vlog about my feelings about the auto industry. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me here today.